Hey, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the NY Patriot Show again. This week, I do have my amazing Canadian co-host, Theresa, with me. What's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Gonna have a good night. I got you, and I also got the guys from Hush Hush with us tonight. You guys want to say what's up? We'll start with Mike.
Hey, what's up? Mystery Mike here from Hush Hush Society. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much. I guess whoever else wants to go next, Dave.
Declassified David. I'm here.
Thank you.
All right. Well.
All right. So yeah. I'm sure you guys introduced yourselves by now and bullshitted. So oh well. I don't know. I guess I'll have to edit all that out for when I drop the show. But it's live and it's too late now anyway. But
no worries.
Yeah, it will all be in there regardless of me.
All access, man.
Yes.
All access.
Yes. So I did have you guys on to talk about Tavistock. I know I've covered the subject before, like probably over a year ago, or like in the beginning of my podcasting career, I guess. So it was a while ago, but I still think it's like a huge subject and a topic. I've talked about it me and Lux have come across it and talked about it numerous times. Sometimes there's even things that we come across that go to Tavistock and we don't even bring it up because it's just like, why bring it up unless we really go into it?
Yeah.
So like, and it's like one of those things. It's like, where do you even start? And I'm always up to listening to hearing about it. So when I asked you guys to come on, and then what topic could you cover? You mentioned Tavistock, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm always down to hear that. So yeah, I don't know where you guys want to start off with that. What even made you get into it, looking into Tavistock?
Mike.
Yeah, it was me.
It was the beginning of our 7th season. He's like, fuck you guys. Topic.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah, this is what we're doing.
It's one of those subjects that not a lot of people know about, and I thought that it was so kind of under the radar, but at the same time very widespread that people should know that it exists if they didn't, and what it was all about and what was going on with this organization. So we dove deep into it with our episode, and it's pretty wild. If even half of the stuff that we learned about Tavistock is true, then we're in big trouble, and these guys pretty much control a lot of it.
It gave me Black Rock vibes.
Yeah.
The similar feeling of doing all the research on that. And that was another one that Mike did himself. He was just like, fuck you guys. This is my topic. And he did all the research. I looked up my own research. I'm sure Frank did the same. And then we came together, and it was like getting hit by a train. So that's what Tavistock felt to me. It was like another layer of the onion of complete the depths of conspiracy, but it feels like reality because clearly, especially when we were talking, one of the major talking points that Mike had brought on to this research was some of the training you get at jobs and like the job culture and the workplace culture and now your job is a family was one of the most bizarre like epiphanies of being like, oh God, that's the reason why that like I just took, harassment training and this and that and everything else that I've done like clockwork every year at a certain job and a job previously. And I'm just like, oh my God, I didn't escape it.
To preface all this, again, if you don't know about Tavistock is an institute. It's based out of the UK. It's essentially, they call it kind of a mental health institute. And it was started.
I thought that was the United States.
Yeah, it's actually, it's spiderwebbed into the United States now. But it was started pre-World War I for shell-shock World War I soldiers. And then eventually it moved on to doing these militaristic things. And then it turned into this big social experiment with psychology and sociology and pretty much started by a bunch of psychologists and psychiatrists that decided that they were going to break down pretty much everything that makes you human. Everything that you would want, your hungers, your wants, your needs, your desires, your family, anything that could be considered societal. Dave was mentioning about workplace stuff. So all of your workplace culture was as it is today, especially if you're part of a corporation or you work for a corporation, all of that training stuff and the verbiage that they use in workplace handbooks and things of that nature, were essentially originated with Tavistock. Tavistock wrote that handbook. So
in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a Scottish guy that started this entire shebang.
Yeah.
So it's
Shebang.
yeah.
Well, a key point is that the Rockefeller Foundation funded a lot of the Institute's establishment. And that kind of brings it full circle into the actual effect that has on our world. Like, it's not just this little weird clinic that's doing weird studies. Like, they have elites dumping money into social experiments, essentially.
I could say from our experience when we've covered stuff that kind of led to Tavistock, it always seemed to have been like either some sort of school or like almost like a weird Christian, like it looks like a Christian-based university or something that was like somehow kind of getting like ideas, or like they were. It was almost like a kind of. I wouldn't know how to explain it. I guess the best way of like, it seems to me Tavistock was like kind of involved with planting ideas and like, you know, progressive thought into these places. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of it. Is now currently there's something like over 30 different institutes throughout the entire United States, including think tanks and other
think tanks,
social experiments and other mental health institutes that Tavistock is directly linked to. So they're pretty widespread, and like you said, there's a lot of things that they were introducing. You mentioned like kind of like a Christian feel to it. Well, another interesting part of it is that they were very instrumental in the creation of what's the word that I'm looking for, like preacher televangelists. So like the big movement for Tavistock was to create a big circus like attraction to religion. So the best way that they figured out how to do that is to yell, to instill this loud, boisterous type of voice to all of this religious stuff that they were trying to tout. In a way, it wasn't to strengthen Christian values or anything. It was a way to denounce them. It was a way to directly correlate Christian values and Christian beliefs to the influx of money, to try and correlate and say that religion and Christian religion, especially in America, is breaking you down because it's all about money, because that's what televangelists were all about.
Like that prosperity gospel?
Oh, okay. So like they
Kind of
kind of
stuff?
fed into giving the idea that church was about money too. Like I get that.
There's a lot of things that they introduced, a lot of ideas that they introduced that you don't think twice about, but realistically, they've been shaping the way that we think and we operate, even as consumers or as family units throughout the United States, our culture. They've been shaping that since World War II.
It's
And
very
before.
frightening. Very frightening.
Was it ever something maybe something else before then? Like was there that I don't know. Like was there maybe
had
some
to
other
have been.
program that let's say then turned into Tavistock? Is there something like that?
So Tavistock originally started out as the Tavistock Clinic, as I said before, World War I, which was all about helping shell-shock soldiers. Eventually, there was a split off. So the clinic stayed as a mental health clinic under the new NHS, so like the new health services in the UK. And then the institute split off because they wanted to do kind of private sector things and work on these social experiments and groupthink projects. And they couldn't do that under the guise of NHS because they wanted influx of funds. They wanted to make money off of it. And the only way to make money off of it is to not be under the umbrella of a government subsidized program, which is what, their health services are. But before that, if you look at the origins of Tavistock, as we said, Rockefellers, the British Crown, and the Milner Group, which is essentially like the big baddies of the UK, they all funded Tavistock, but the origins come from the Committee of 300.
Mm-hmm.
And they say this is who started the idea of Tavistock, even in those clinic days. It all came down from the Community of 300.
You know anything about that? Like, I haven't actually heard that before.
Dude, I totally took notes on this for this episode, and I have no idea where they are. And Committee of 300 was one of them. It goes way back.
They were trying, especially when it comes to the Committee of 300 and Tavistock together, they were trying to push society to make major shifts. And I believe it was after, I want to say, World War II. They were really pushing against the household and personal relationships.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And that was one thing that we found too, is that the one thing we noticed about the Tavistock Institute, it's literally at your dinner table. It's gotten to that point. And
it influences and controls what people are talking about when they're sitting down and eating dinner and shit.
That, and just the way relationships work, the way marriages work, the way, almost this, it could be a tribute to all the stuff that's happening now, where we've shifted from, it's been a long time coming, since obviously the 50s, 60s, and all the way up until now, where people aren't getting married as much, people aren't having kids as much. And I think it's definitely a direct result because of some of the crossovers from both the Committee of 300 and Tavistock, especially from some of the research that Mike really delved into.
All right, so I found my one little note, and it says the Committee of 300, aka the Olympians. It's a conspiracy theory that claims that a powerful group was founded by the British aristocracy in 1727. So this is going back like close to 300 years. So some sort of
did you say 1727?
1727. Yeah,
that's interesting.
So
yeah, I started covering the number 17 on my show, and I wasn't looking for it, and I noticed, I think after the fact, or as I was recording it and going through this show, I started noticing like how it was in things to where you were able to make it into a 27 as well, multiple, a few times. And, you also get 27 where, like, I've heard a lot of people, die, Kurt Cobain, the guys from the Doors, people like that.
Yeah.
The 27th path on the tree would before you kind of cross up and see your holy guardian angel, all weird shit like that. So I was starting to wonder, like, if you have both there, 1727, you wonder if, like, a date like that is specific.
I know it's a little bit off subject, but I gotta ask, can you elaborate on the number 17 just like briefly? Because there is this artist that I listen to that has an album called 17, and they have 17 tattooed like up on their neck or on their face or something.
Is that like Ouija Mac or some shit?
Really?
Who is that?
X. It's just X or XXXTentacion. That dude that died like a couple years back. Yeah.
Oh no, I know. Like Ouija Mac
17
has it on. I think over here he has like 17 on the side of his face too. My opinion, I think it's a lot to do with kind of the bottom part of the tree. You get like it's kind of like the right side more or less rising up or going up just the right side. To me, it's kind of like the beast in a sense, rising, or the Kundalini rising. But if you don't keep it balanced, you'll end up with destruction. You can end up with Hitler, and then if you don't have balance on the Scarlet Whore, you'll end up with the other side. It's total communism, and then you have Nazis on this side. You know what I'm saying? You would just end up with shit. But on both sides, if they're not balanced. But the 17, in my opinion, it goes back to, the rising beast, Quetzalcoatl, the rainbow serpent. Again, the going up the tree, going up all those colors, death of the old self, rebirth of a new self. There's a lot has to do with literally like the beast and shit, in my opinion. Especially when you get into numbers too, and even in the Bible, there's a lot of 17s. And there's Revelation 17:17. He's got he got 7 heads, 10 horns, 17.
I don't know, actually. Not sure.
And then you could add his crown. No, you got 7 heads, 10 horns, and then if you want to add his 10 crowns, you get to 27. But you do have the 17 with the head and the horns. So shit like that I was coming across too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the community of 300 is also supposedly made up of 300 of the wealthiest men in the world.
Isn't it the Elders of Zion? Like it's a Jewish group, no?
Little connections there.
Well, one thing that we did find. Now, you mentioned that, especially when we were talking about World War II. There was a guy who was a German-born. Kind of the father of modern social psychology, Kurt Lewin, Dr. Kurt Lewin, who was born in Germany, and in the 30s, he became like the driving force of the anti-German sentiment campaign, or the campaign that would eventually lead the United States to actually going to war with Germany, and that was alleged. But it also claimed that the Tavistock Institute carried out bombings by us, the UK, to kind of research mass fear, almost kind of like what we think happened with COVID. But also this Lewin guy worked with Winston Churchill, President Roosevelt, and had a guy named Major General Donovan, and he worked or was indoctrinated into Tavistock. And Donovan actually established the OSS, which was a precursor to the CIA. So that was very fascinating. So you say something about, with anything that has to do with where these guys were almost the opposite of what was going on in Germany and their views on what was happening to the Jewish population. So it's very weird that you have a German-born guy that's just like, let's do some crazy shit, but on top of it, let's create the CIA from it. That really fucked me up.
Did you find with this stuff going back any other things like kind of pointing you towards like Germany and stuff? Because I've even noticed that when we covered, like, again, going back to the same schools, you'd have these universities, and then I said like these Catholic schools that would have this big elaborate fucking church on their fucking website, whoever up there, it looks so nice and so, everything's done up. It looks very expensive. But then yet the people that we were following that came out of these schools were literally putting out leftist propaganda, basically. They were outspoken Marxists. They're total feminists. They wrote stuff on that shit. And I'm like, how did you get someone like that from a Catholic-based school? But those people were always, any of those schools that we ended up finding, most of them always somehow were connected to the Goethe University. And then that took it back to Germany. And then when you go on that site, they're outspoken Marxists. They are even associated with the working families that AOC is associated with. They're partners. That fucking the Goethe University or whatever it is over in Germany is partners with the working families in New York City that AOC pushes. It is total Marxism. You go on that website, you'll see Marx's face on it. So I wonder, like, I keep thinking, and I hate to say it, I really think Germany and Italy has mentally and physically fucked this country over and over again.
Okay, so there's some interesting ties to Germany, and I'm not gonna say that. I'll say it, but Germany got a bad rap.
You think so?
In certain aspects. I'm not going to say that Nazis got a bad rap or that Hitler got a bad rap. I'm going to say Germany in general got a bad rap. After World War One, there was essentially a lull. And this is when the Great Depression happens, economic hardships happen, and the richest of the rich of this country and of the world, of course, realize there's money in war. War is where money happens, and that's why we've been in a war consistently since then. So between World War One and World War Two, there was obviously Lewin was working to kind of kickstart a war again. And the best way to do that was to create this propaganda against Germany. So if you look at like a lot of these around World War One, like 1935, 36, propaganda posters against Germany, it's anti-German. A lot of those posters and that propaganda was created by Tavistock and by Lewin to essentially make Americans hate Germany. And want to start a war with them. Now, as Dave mentioned, Winston Churchill, him and the American president at the time, they had Lewin as kind of like a consultant between them. And Lewin was the whisperer in their ear saying that we could solve a lot of problems if we just invaded Germany. If we declare war on Germany, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. If we declare war, we can do this. And a lot of it was like an economic rebound. A lot of it was, if we got into this, we could help our country out. We could help a lot of Americans out. They really spun the story of getting into this war with Germany. Now, coinciding with that, you also had the richest of the rich that were bankrolling Germany into a fascist state. They were bankrolling Hitler also. So behind the scenes, they were propping up Hitler. If you look at a lot of like his military uprising and how he came through the ranks, there was no coming through the ranks. He was essentially just like a soldier. Corporal, then he became like an officer, and then he was the fucking leader of Germany.
He was literally a private, then a corporal, and then went to prison, and then now he's the Supreme Chancellor. Yeah. So
they looked at how he was starting the German workers group, and they really wanted to back him. So American and UK elitists, pretty much, or millionaires at the time, were bankrolling Hitler to become the next leader, so that he could lead them into a war to fight against the rest of Europe, but also at the same time to take care of their Jewish problem, as they called it. And the Jewish problem was that the Jewish people were taking up a large stock of the money and the funds that they wanted, and a lot of the property that they wanted. So the best way to do that, wipe them out. So this all coincided. It's things that ran concurrent to each other to push us into World War II with Germany. And then you have the weird coincidences that after World War II, Germany was supposed to pay some exorbitant amount of money in reparations. Something like to the tune of like 170 million francs or whatever, at the time, which was like just crazy amounts of money for the time. And then they estimated that if they had worked pretty much full time at paying it back with even no interest, they wouldn't pay it back until like 1966 or something. And that was like concurrent, like nonstop. And then, sure enough, a couple years after the war ended, they wiped the slate clean and pretty much said, like, Germany doesn't have to pay that anymore. And that bill was taken care of by elites that were funding Hitler at the time.
I think
So
maybe the
tax
reason
dollars.
why we look at that differently is because I think once you say the word Nazi, that's an occult or organization. It's not. So if it's an occult organization, I can't trust what it's showing me. You know what I'm saying? All I know is that it could be lies. And then still, even if... Because I honestly, this almost still fits what I was saying before. How do we know this wasn't all fabricated to give us an excuse to go to war? Germany was still involved with doing that.
Yeah.
So they're still
Like-
fucking us in the ass.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they still did mass atrocities, and they were still very much involved in a war.
Yeah, or even or presenting one, even if it wasn't as bad as it was, they were still okay with footage being played over here showing us how bad it was. Just like with the Azov Battalion now in Ukraine, they are known Nazis, far-right Nazis. As soon as you say Nazi, I can't trust the footage they're sending CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. They supply them with footage from over there. I'm supposed to trust what a Nazi, an occult organization, is showing me that's going on over in another country I can't check. It's propaganda. It's magic. It's giving you an idea of what's going on when you don't know and you believe a lie. So if I think that Nazis are like that, I have to still blame Germany because they had Nazis in World War II.
And
That's
Frank
why
said it in our episode about Tavistock is they're probably just, there might be a master plan, but he had the question of what if they're just doing this to fuck around and find out, see how many people actually believe like what you just said.
Yeah.
Like a big social experiment.
Exactly. Like, was it
Continuous.
by grand?
Well, at least then the
grand
Germans,
design
the story is pretty intense then. You know, it's pretty good for occultism. If it was all fake, at least they spun a good fucking bullshit story.
I think the tops are all in bed with each other. It doesn't matter who you are. You gotta at least, and you're not even talking like NATO countries and other countries. All these, there's some exceptions, I'm sure, when it comes to certain countries, but the New World Order is a real thing. So, you know, and we know it's a real thing.
Yeah, those people I don't think we'll ever know the names of, though. You know what I'm saying? Like that
No,
shit, yeah.
but I think that this is all
Comes from there.
might be a culmination of how to get there. Because if you do, most of these resets are what, every 100 years or so. And I think, Mike, you even said it recently, I believe in our research at Tavistock, where you said that there might be, we just said, what if America's a social experiment? I mean, that's kind of where I was going with that, is that you could, if it's just continuously something that, I think I even said, like, oh, do you think this is the British just trolling us after we left? And they continue, because it's a British started organization. Do you think that they just kept going and going and going, and they're just like, let's see how far we
They're
can
like,
get
you
these
guys
Americans
think you
to
got
do it.
away? No way.
We gotcha.
Well, that was the entire idea
That'd be
behind
great.
Tavistock.
That'd be great.
Was to destroy the American culture. That was the entire reason as to why they got into all these social experiments and mass think tanks and all these other things. They got into that to destroy American culture. Think of something. Okay, so current today, this affects us today. Feminism. Now, I'm not talking about feminism like, oh, my vagina is power and life and energy and everything. No, I'm talking about like feminism, like fuck men.
Yeah.
I know that men commit suicide. They should do it more often. Men should kill each other more. Those like toxic fucking feminists.
Again, to the extreme, yes.
Yeah.
Unbound.
That was started by Tavistock.
Oh, yes.
So feminism as a whole,
that for sure.
was started by Tavistock.
Well, and even just getting women out of the home in general, right? Pushing them to work.
Exactly.
And that was
like
the
what we said
beginning.
before.
That was the breakdown of the American family.
That always seems to be a commonality whenever me and like Lux, we get into stuff like of like these schools or whatever, and like what kind of like people were coming out of them and what they were putting in books. that was always a common thing, that there was always like feminists among it, you know, or like very, very big. It's very weird. You know, and it's, I don't know if that's like to help push the left or some shit, but.
Well, Tavistock was the organization that incorporated pushing, getting women into the workplace and out of the home, like you said. And that, in my thought process when we were talking about this, was, well, that creates an extra consumer. That's a second person with a second income. That's more consume.
An extra taxpayer.
Yeah, an extra tax. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And if you're taking them out of the house, if some people are making more money, I mean, right now, obviously, we're supposedly seeing a decline in birth rates, but you can create a bunch of workers if you guys have a double income. You can have more. You can have more kids, because you have to buy them things. You have to keep buying them things. And that's why I said it kind of like ties into BlackRock, because obviously the same people that are doing these social experiments are banking off of all these major companies that are doing anything. You know, you got to buy shampoo for your son. You got to buy shampoo for your daughter, yourself, your husband. Everybody's got to have some different product. So you're just instead of the, I guess, the conventional role beforehand of, oh, the man's got to go to the shipyard and work 14 hours. And, you know, you have your wife that's at home cooking fucking potatoes in the 1920s or whatever the fuck was going on. And then all of a sudden that's the thing. It's not negative. Like, obviously letting women into the workforce was a fucking moral, normal thing that should have happened, but they created more consumerism with it completely.
I think the danger is like, I'm just saying this as a woman today, and I see this with a lot of my friends who are married or in relationships or whatever. It's created a problem where I think women feel obligated now to do both. Like, now we're just fucked up in the head, and it's like, do I stay home because I feel like I should, or like, you know, raise your kids or whatever, but do I work? And if I don't work, do I have no value? You know, or if I do work, then I'm a bad mother. Like, women now you just can't win at all. Mm-hmm. You're fucked. And I see it, it plays out in a lot of people's relationships and marriages, and it's very difficult.
It's burnout.
Yeah.
I mean, you're playing two roles, and, you know, there's obviously both sides do that, but when it comes to like you're on your end, it's clearly, like you just said, like, if I don't work, do I not have, you know, my own personal value? That's it upset me during it. I think that was one of the things that stressed me out during that episode, was the fact that it was like, well, you're psychologically manipulating people of what to think of what their value is over a career, you know, or if they make money. And I think it was just, I was hoping that wasn't deliberate, and it might just be a side effect of what the original plan was to, like I said, capitalism, consumerism, making money off of all of it. But the social experiment, I mean, they've changed it. It's changed the dynamic on, like, even the way that you think about, you know, like, because you just said, those are things that I've definitely heard from close friends, girlfriends, you know, like if I don't do this, then I'm this. And it's fucked up. If that's like the way that they pushed it. Yeah.
And just for so many years, I think, like, you know, having grown up in the 80s and 90s, it was very much pushed that women should become more corporatized and like pursue like corporate endeavors. So it's like, you can have it all. You can, you know, do this or do whatever you want. And it's kind of like the girl power like mentality coming up with Spice Girls in like the late 90s and all this kind of thing. And it does permeate in like young girls' psyche, you know, and it affects them as mothers and wives later on. So it becomes a big issue for sure.
Should we talk about music?
It's conflicting, because that goes all the way back to, like we mentioned before, the 20s, with the liberation of women getting into the workplace and partying and doing whatever it is that they please, getting out of the house. And then here we are 100 years later with a flip-flopped scenario. And then you've got generations of people that are kind of conflicted as to like what to do, a sense of identity, even because their parents and grandparents were saying one thing and now modern society is saying another, and it can get dicey.
You know what I think they also did too when they started, making it like a thing for women to go back to work. They also started kind of like normalizing and almost advertising towards women smoking and drinking now in the media. It's like, well, now since they go out and work, they should be able to smoke and drink. They hit them with that, sell them more of that shit. Now it's acceptable. She doesn't have to hide it in her house. She can go out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just like, it's like, come on, this shit just seems like way too like very tiptoeing towards something.
Yeah, there was even a famous ad campaign for cigarettes, and they coined the term "torches of freedom" for cigarettes for women. Yeah, that it was like liberating,
Torches of cancer.
Exactly, torches of freedom. I'm kidding, but that's how they marketed it to women.
Well, if they did it, they succeeded at creating a social stigma in all the other stigmas. Because like I said, again, just hearing you say something like that, they've created a perception of how you're supposed to think, and it's just, I don't know. It's bizarre. This whole topic is so bizarre.
So they had to work this into place for decades. So that started back in the 1920s with like flappers. So there would be this propaganda that went out about women going out and partying, doing drugs, drinking, doing that whole party life and leaving the kind of setups, family structure of wife stays home, man goes to work type of thing. So that happened throughout the 1920s. You have the 1920s flappers. Then you start to get to World War II. World War II happens. All the men go off to war. Now you have the women taking over the baseball league. You have women that are going to work in the factories. Rosie the Riveter, she pops up as like this big figure of feminism. And then after World War II, you get into the 50s. The women kind of get back into their like home life, Susie Homemaker type of thing. In the 60s and 70s, you have the women's liberation movement, where women are they're free. They're trying to do their own thing now. They're starting to get into the workforce, but not like completely, definitely not corporatism. In the 80s, Tavistock holds this essentially a convention. Okay. They hold it up in Canada. This guy who is, he's like a big time, oil tycoon guy. He heads it up. One of the biggest things that they talked about, and it was on the referendum of this convention, was women in the workplace. And they really wanted to push women in the workplace, women in the workplace, women in the workplace. As you said, Theresa, 80s and 90s, women are coming into the corporate world. That's where you start to see women wearing pantsuits and going into the office and
shoulder pads.
The shoulder pads, exactly. You see more and more and more of that. As the movement grows and feminism grows, now we come into the 2000s. Into the 2000s, we're at the height of women's freedom and how they feel liberated. Now you have to start to tilt the scales, okay, where it becomes women are now becoming equal, and they want equal pay, and they like, of course, the equal pay thing is always like this big myth that's been pushed since like the 80s, because realistically, since like let's say even the 2000s, there is equal pay. It's just they see the differential between a man and a woman working. A man works longer hours. A man is usually in a position of higher power, whatever it may be. Also, men work in construction, other things that women don't do. So that's where they don't pay attention to the wage gap. But they start to push the wage gap. Now you start to come into the 2010s, and women are at the height of their feminism. They're wearing their pussy hats, and they're going out and doing marches and all these beautiful things. But when you reach the 2010s, that is where the arrow shoots to the heart of the conventional nuclear family. That's gone. That's gone. And it'll never be that way again. We'll never go back to that, like, married, 2.5 kids, nuclear family. That won't happen anymore.
Half kid. I like it.
Now.
Kids.
Yeah, right. Have to. How do you have
So
that?
it has been planned for years and years and years, and as we've seen throughout many different times, it's men versus women, rich versus poor, black versus white, Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative. It's always
Splitting.
dividing us into two different groups and saying you are the ones responsible for the problems. Well, no, you are. And it's always been that way, and it's always been kind of the plan of these people to see how far they can push our culture and our society until it breaks. And from many different ends, many different parts.
I wonder how many names or things they've coined and we have no idea. Like,
Oh, probably
you know
so
what I'm saying?
many.
Like even organizations or fucking parties and the government. Who knows? You know.
Well, I can't say that this is if this is created from this, but I would say it's probably some part of that social experiment. But you think about the Boy Scouts of America. They have in 1937
Something's
at the height of, literally World War II, especially in Europe.
Beginnings, yep.
Yeah. You have den mothers start to come into play. And that's this protector of the tribe that you have, because the men are all off to war. And I think it was in 1948 that they actually you had to register to be a den mother. And I did Boy Scouts for a while as a kid, and so you really start to see them bringing in the whole. It almost feels like that in the 30s is when they kind of threw they incepted the single mother aspect. You have this whole tribe and by themselves, and it might have just been because obviously the men were all shipped off to war, but I didn't really think about that when we were talking about that. I thought about it just now. It's just maybe the Boy Scout thing was a thing, because when I did that, especially in Cub Scouts, the men were not present during meetings. It was the den mothers. They made the food. You had dinner with them. You did all your stuff. And then it wasn't until Boy Scouts where you started to have the den leaders, not the den mothers. So you started to have these different, verbiage of people, and the den leaders were the guys that, the men that took you out camping and took you out shooting guns and shooting bow and arrows and, doing all this crazy shit, fucking psychotic ass swimming in winter. Like, let's take a bunch of 8-year-olds and throw them in a fucking lake, in mid-March and give them a patch because they survived. But yeah, I don't know. There was just one thing. There's so many things that we talked about that this thing did, and one of the biggest ones, music.
Yeah, the music industry is absolutely huge.
And music, movies, anything what you see. Mike threw in a ton of Beatles stuff and even some other more modern artists. And it would be such a damn shame if that's all fabricated to make that happen.
Well, yeah. So the narrative is that the Tavistock Institute was behind the hippie counterculture, with all of the LSD and the groovy ass music that was allegedly breaking down the morale of society.
Yeah, I do definitely think that. Even if that was something that was organic, I do think that people or some 3-letter agency or somebody took advantage of the situation and ruined
CIA?
it. Yeah.
What was Tavistock's Institute's connection to the CIA, Mike?
They started it.
They wrote the fucking handbooks for that shit.
Yeah, Tavistock wrote all the handbooks for the CIA. So all of your mental fortitude, torture, mental torture, psychological torture,
dropping people out of windows.
The big drops. All that CIA handbook stuff was written by the Tavistock Institute and taken from data that they collected between World War I and World War II from those shell shock troops. So they pretty much looked at it, collected this data, and said, "What makes you tick? Why are you fucked up from this war?" And then switched that up, applied it to the human brain and tactics that they can use against enemies during interrogation, and wrote the book and gave it to the CIA.
Tavistock as a whole makes Operation Midnight Climax look like a Ziploc bag full of fucking thumbtacks, dude.
But a product of it.
A product of it nonetheless. Yeah. Little birth child.
You know, I hate to say it. So like I've said it before, that NY kind of looks like my buddy Zach. I'm like reminded every time that I'm in a show with him. He looks like Zach. But Zach, my buddy, is a huge fan of the Grateful Dead. And I know a few people that are deadheads, and they're all about that like counterculture life. And when you realize that essentially the Grateful Dead was created and managed by Tavistock, they were made by Tavistock.
You know, I thought I had heard that they were kind of like I think I heard somebody kind of comparing them to a boy band, but like one of the originals. They were like they were put together. They didn't, you know, they were like kind of made. You know, like I mean, I've even heard that about the Clash too. So, and they had a pretty big impact.
Yeah, one of their tour managers was actually, I think he was a member or loosely connected to the Tavistock Institute. He was he worked for them. So yeah, he was one of the tour managers for the Grateful Dead.
Did you guys see that? They're the
Alan Trist. That was his name.
What was the I saw it in the chat. I can't see the chat right now. Yeah, there it is, right there. Look at that. Jim Morrison's dad? No shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they also had a place over by Laurel Canyon, too, which was like a weird...
Laurel Canyon.
The Branch Davidians. Yeah. Oh, man. That's a whole... I wonder if they're just psyoping him.
And that's another 27, too. Jim Morrison.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
You gotta find a 17 in there now.
The Beatles were a big one. Tavistock.
They made idolizing like the thing to do for women. It was okay.
Yeah.
Mike said that people were pooping their pants waiting for them, like literally just, like soiling themselves.
When I did the Scarlet Horse series, I actually used footage of like fans running to their shows, showing people
fainting.
idolizing. Yeah.
Yep.
It was like, and then I'd show like, you know, like a Riot or Antifa next. Same thing. Just looks different. No, it just looks different. You're just acting fucking retarded, but that one's acceptable. You're still doing it. You're still doing it because of an idea that you have.
If it's the same group that's creating this division, then it's going to look like similar behavior, right?
Yep.
Yeah, people possessed and just acting out.
Yep.
The
Beatles are supposedly were created by Tavistock. They say that most of, if not all of the music that they wrote lyrically, they did not write. It was actually written by a man named Theodore Adorno. And as we were talking about kind of a Jewish connection, not to get too deep into it, but he was like a classical composer, and he was a really bad musician, honestly. But he was really into like these very weird tones and tonality. And he would write the music. He would write the Beatles lyrics. But he used this thing, and he used a lot in his own like original music called the 12 tonal system, and why you'll find this interesting. And it's kind of like this repetitive, heavy bass, heavy sounds, and it was actually music that was derived from the music of the Dionysus cult and the Baal priesthood.
What?
Yeah, and then he went on to kind of put like a modern flavor on it. He would utilize those sounds and utilize all that, and supposedly he created modern rock and roll using that same 12 tonal system.
That's where it hurt me.
Wow.
You know what's funny is that David Lynch, I think, takes it back to like rock and roll on the TV as like fucking up people's minds and shit. He does blame those two things specifically. And he's very much into showing like media and sound and electricity and just weird shit in his stuff. So it's very interesting that you said that, because even someone like him who's highly into occult shit sees it as well, you know?
Just earlier today, my 7-year-old is like, Mommy, is rock and roll devil music? And I was like, maybe.
Could be.
Could be. I said, what do you think? He said, no. I said, all right. I'll just leave it there for today.
Then rock on, kid.
Yeah.
Rock
Right?
on.
I was like, kind of.
Yo, even
Do you
today,
think
you mentioned
Do you think it's
tones.
gotten ridiculous though now?
Uh.
Like, do you think it's gotten to the point where like you can totally tell that people on Fox News are just actors?
Dude,
And not-
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
Either
I
that
put
or they
on
just go
Fox
along.
News just satirically, just for the fuck of it. Sometimes
I.
I'll sit down and watch the. All right, so I actually did this thing last week. I put on Fox News for about half an hour, and then I put on CNN for about half an hour, and then I put on NBC for about half an hour, just to see the conflicting views of the same thing. And me and my girlfriend are sitting on the couch, and we're just like looking at each other, like jaw dropped, like, yo, they're pushing completely different narratives on the same topics to like vast majorities of people at the same time. So yeah, they're definitely fucking actors.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's wild.
Question for you guys. So the hippie movement, and all the music that came with that, the LSD, isn't one of the goals of Tavistock also to push like transcendental meditation,
Oh.
all this kind of stuff? So don't you think that was part of it?
Yeah, so they helped push the new age movement, which included a lot of that like meditative stuff. But as people would see it, you'd look at new age, woo woo, that type of stuff as something that would be like
Wicca.
that would help you. It'd make you feel good. It was, something to strengthen your mental fortitude and to, just kind of like look within yourself, those things. Realistically, it was created to destroy religion. It was created to destroy Christian households. So if you had more people that were into meditation and yoga and all these different things that were touted as good for you, a lot more people would be willing to ignore traditional religion. So that was a movement of Tavistock within itself, and that went along with the counterculture and with that whole free love type of thing. So it's kind of weird that on one end they were creating this counterculture and this movement to kind of expand your mind, but on the other end of it, they were also helping governments and helping the CIA to control people and to spy on people and to torture people, essentially. So they were working both ends of it. Now, we talk about like the NWO, we talk about like, these big groups, the Illuminati, the whatever name you want to call these big groups of elites. Tavistock is not that. I think Tavistock may take orders from some of them, or may, be figuring some of this stuff out for them. But realistically, I think Tavistock is its own entity in a way that it kind of, not altruistically, but it kind of cares more about the science than it does about the result. So they're wondering, how far can we push a person until they do X, Y, or Z? Can we figure out exactly how a human would react if we put them in this situation or this situation?
Do you think they're doing that with these like these 19 through 25-year-old kids, just pushing that type of mass media that's going to drive somebody to do a shooting like Club Q or whatever that just recently happened?
Very possible. I think mostly what it's done as we've moved into the 2000s, we got into the internet era, and Tavistock has kind of moved online and moved to this more, technological era that again they were looking forward to for a long time. They called it the technotronic era, an era that they were looking forward to, where essentially where we're at now, where people could be online and the government and whoever could trace whatever they were doing, monitor whatever they were doing, and watch them at all times. But I think that if you look at it now, like look at the younger generation, if you look at like Gen Z, they're very much in this weird space that hasn't existed ever. In the way that if you look at a Gen Z now, even in a joking manner or a joking tone, they will talk about how they would rather be dead than have to deal with life. It's almost like, you see the meme, oh, I can't wait for this train to hit me, that type of thing. Like, I gotta go to work in an hour. I hope I get hit by a bus. Like,
yeah,
and
no,
they
I've
play
seen
it
people
off,
like that actually.
They play it off kind of like a joke, but in reality, what is that psychologically doing to a still developing mind?
Do you think they're like setting up for like a mass suicide calling or some form of like that, like, or just setting people up to go down that path to have miserable existences? I mean, you go back to feeding off of energy, and if they have negative energy perpetuating over and over again, like just a simple joke like that, like a comedian or even ourselves would be like, oh, that's fucking hilarious, but it's dark.
I mean, whether it's to shoot for suicide or not, it's diminishing your self-worth. Mm-hmm. It's the mass diminishing of self-worth. But
even beyond that, it's not just your self-worth, it's the worth of everyone around you.
True.
Because in your head, you're looking at this meme and you're going, well, that's how I feel. But a part of you is saying, well, if I feel that way, how many other people feel that way too? Because if this meme is being shared by 2,500 other people, then 2,500 other people are kind of thinking the same thing. So why are we all thinking that our life is like that expendable and that easy to just like write off? Like, it's a weird thing, and I'm not going to say this Tavistock is responsible for it, but it's a weird thing that psychologically is fucking up a lot of young people.
Well, maybe like you said, like the forces behind Tavistock are more so pushing that agenda, like this death cult agenda, which we're seeing across a lot of other things too. So not just that, but even we were talking before the show about like the euthanasia program in Canada, for example, all the noise about abortion in the last year. It's just pushing this death cult lifestyle, honestly. And I think COVID lockdowns helped perpetuate that a lot. Like, a bleak existence.
That was a huge like ending takeaway on our episode of Tavistock. We were saying on how we could look back 90, 80, 70 years from now and say, okay, this is what they were doing then. This is where we're at now. We can actually like look at the progression of society and see what led to what. And like Mike was saying, now we're in this weird state that's never existed. And we can theorize all we'd like about why what's happening to society is happening, but we have no idea what the intention is for 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that we're actually setting up for in present day.
Just look at the differences in life in the last 20 years.
Yeah. I've said that before. I'm like, can you imagine what that would be like again in another 20?
I mean, 20 years ago for some people was Discmans, and kind of in the same realm of like decent technology. We had the internet was still there, but you were stealing music from musicians in a different way that Spotify does differently. So you're using Napster and BearShare and LimeWire and stuff.
Oh, you remember that shit?
Yeah, and leave your computer on all night, and then 3 of the downloads failed, and you're like,
and you get the most garbage compressed version of the song too. You're like, I can kind of hear it.
I'm just gonna pretend I know what you're talking about.
Downloads from LimeWire were like fucking without a condom in the mid '90s.
You didn't know if you were. Yeah, you could have been downloading a Metallica song, but instead you got porn audio. You never knew what you were gonna get.
Mass viruses.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I think
I used to use Kazaa. You remember Kazaa?
Oh yeah,
or Soulseek. Soulseek.
You had to
was
keep
really
moving
good.
because of Lars Ulrich. He kept fucking everybody over. So, I think now even more so, like bringing it like to like today, even more so. I think every single thing you see, like Frank, you said you watch 3 different mainstream news stations, and you're like, what the hell, you know, like, but even just today, there was a interview on InfoWars with supposedly Kanye. He's wearing a full like black suit over his face, so he's all muffled. It doesn't even sound like him. It looks like him, but he said on InfoWars, and even to credit like Alex Jones was like, "Oh, I don't think Hitler was a good guy," and then Kanye was like, "Well, I loved everything that he did." So
big fan of his.
No, that's not what he said.
Yes, he did. He did. I love Hitler, and he said exactly that.
It's not,
Well, he
But
gave
it's not confirmed it was Kanye, or
redeeming
it's not just like a
examples of
PR
why.
That's the
stunt.
thing, because it doesn't sound like Kanye.
I don't know if Alex Jones would bring
he
somebody
did at
on
least give
to-
examples why though. Like,
I mean,
You
it's
wouldn't
live.
say that.
Check your
Oh, I
Reddit.
know,
check
I know,
your-
I've seen
check
it,
your
yeah.
Google. It's
I
there.
saw
Yeah,
the
Twitter.
clip. That's
Yeah,
not what he
yeah.
said. You know,
I mean,
what?
he-
I love
he-
Hitler and what he did.
Oh, he's okay. I'm not a Kanye fan, so I'm not.
neither am
defending
I.
him
That's
at
why I don't
all.
want to
I'm
have
not
an opinion
defending him
because I
either,
think
yeah.
he's
No,
a fucking
but no, he was raising a good point that dictators come to power for a reason. They do stuff that wins over people in the beginning. That's how they get popular. It's just a pattern of tyranny.
To Alex Jones' defense, his point was being like, the uniforms are cool. That's all he was going at was the uniforms, and Kanye's like, well, I like Hitler.
Well,
So
do
you
you
can't
guys?
say
Do
that.
any of you drive a Volkswagen?
I used to.
No.
You drove a car
I had-
that Hitler invented.
Yeah,
so
yeah, the
there you
people's
go.
car. It is what it is, like.
But here's the thing.
Vehicles are fantastic.
Okay, I don't want to be canceled, but I've always said that World War II Germany had a really great aesthetic.
Stop, dude.
I think
What does that even mean?
I
But
think
it's
the
true,
mystery
though.
In
Kanye
red,
Mike.
dude. That's classic. That's classic.
What?
Black and red.
Gorgeous.
Come on,
Black
dude.
and red is classic, but they were talking about like the Browns,
The
the
brown
California
shirts?
State Police. They were talking about the Browns.
Oh,
Like-
the Browns.
brown
Like the
shirts.
I meant the
SS?
Cincinnati.
Yeah, they took
SS
over the
was
brown
black.
shirts, didn't they?
Brown
They-
shirts.
The
black
brown shirts, yeah. Like I called a parking cop brown shirt the other day. He got real butthurt at me.
Brown shirt.
Oh my god.
No, but the Kanye thing was my point is
He's
if
out of his
if
mind.
it was really Kanye West, obviously there's been a lot of shit going on with him currently. But if it was really him, why?
Yeah.
Like, why would they stir the pot more and more and more? That's what I mean. Like, regardless of what he said he liked Hitler. So like
He said he was a fan of the
A
things
fan?
that he did.
yeah,
Okay.
which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
But it's
But he-
Kanye West.
Was he talking like the occult things that he did, or like
God,
the
I wish we could bring it up right
extermination
now and
things
just
that
watch
he
the
did?
video.
He said every human being has something of value to bring to the table, especially Hitler.
Yeah.
So I mean, not the words like "I love Hitler." I think it was kind of convoluted because he was like he said
I'm
he
not that stupid.
he
I
he
remember
liked
that.
what was going on.
He's gonna look
I'm
for it. He's gonna
just
look for
watching it on YouTube now, but
Share it.
it was convoluted because he said I love everyone.
I thought he gave examples too
'Cause
about
he-
some shit that
he
he
was
said
pretty
that he
much-
invented. I don't know, too. Like
Yeah, give
he was
examples.
even trying to
But
convince
you
I think
can't
Alex
use the
Jones that he
guy's
wasn't
name
trolling.
in a sentence anymore because it's gonna blow up, and now you're gonna have the far radical people that are like, "Oh yeah, Hitler was great." They're gonna be like, "Look at this guy. He said this."
And
then you got
isn't that
people
the
on
point of Kanye right now? Pretty
It
sure.
is. It is. That's why this guy's. Do you think? and why. I wanted to ask, do you think this guy's doing some crazy ritual right now?
He's a magician. He's fucking with people's heads. He just
Yeah,
wants to become powerful.
his ex-wife is a witch, right? So,
I've broken, really, when it really comes down to it, and this is going to sound silly, but like I really break down magic. Like, I mean, even if somebody, like right now, if somebody's never heard of you people before, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It's like somebody's head is a hard drive or like a filing cabinet. And you just open it up, and if they've never heard of you before, now you write on a folder and you stick it in there and you close the door. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad or not. You existing in multiple people's hard drives now, millions and millions of them. You just start to become a god that way, and that can literally just be what this guy is doing. Good press or bad press, people know his name, and that's going to make him stronger no matter what.
Yeah. Because there's always going to be somebody that's going to disagree with you. And agree with you. And then there's going to be somebody in the middle.
Maybe he's just trying to get to a new fan base.
I also think
what fan base is
maybe he just like maybe he's just like plateaued on record sales, and he's like, Donda didn't do too well. Who else can I reach out to?
I was banging on the door at Skechers. They wouldn't let me
freak you out real quick. There's 2 Kanyes. There's 2 Yees.
So I am not far off from that. I do believe that he has.
I also think he's burnt out though from fucking around with magic. I think he's fried the fuck
for
out.
Sure. That guy's fried as fucked.
Yes.
One of them is. I don't know which one, but there's little Kanye and then there's big Kanye. There's tall Kanye and then there's little Kanye. Look into it. I'm telling you, there's 2 of them.
What?
And I don't know which one they're trashing right now, but
I don't think
Tavistock
Institute's
their reps are listening to us right now, like, haha, these stupid fucks.
You don't think he was on there?
I covered his clothes recently on our show.
So what if that's some sort of psyop to further trash Kanye?
Yeah,
I saw something on the news. I don't know if it was on the news or if it was a clip on YouTube or something. Did you see that they were trying to say that Kanye had dinner at Trump's residence with some sort of white supremacist or something like that? What was that confirmed or not?
I don't know. There's a lot of shit with him I haven't been paying attention to.
Some sort of psyop trashing sort of thing.
The story behind that is kind of suspicious, only because so supposedly Trump knew that he was going to have dinner with Kanye, but didn't know that Fuentes was coming. Now, Trump, for all his shortcomings and whatever else, is still a former U.S. president and is still supported by the Secret Service. So they all have to be registered or kind of announced before they show up. So for him to say, well, I didn't know that Fuentes was going to be there, is kind of suspicious in itself.
Well, that's a good point, my man.
So if you look at that, it's kind of like,
I even thought the story with him and his place getting raided. It's like when you're reading the news or how it's told, like his lawyers were there waiting for them.
Yep.
I'm like, I mean, come on.
Yep. But I also think that's
perpetuated.
I also think that's kind of an Alex Jones situation. So like it's like the Alex Jones like court situation where like he had a bunch of text messages that were accidentally sent to the prosecutor by his own law team, like his own lawyers sent
I saw
it.
that, yeah.
And even the prosecutor had like texted him back and was like, did you send these to us accidentally, or are we filing this as like evidence? They didn't answer. So it's kind of like one of those situations where I think like his own people are kind of working against him. And it's been proven time and time again with Trump, with his advisors and people around him, that they're kind of out to get him. They don't give a fuck if he like gets pinched at this point. So I don't know. I still find it very interesting that Trump is like glorified. That's wild to me.
Trump steaks.
People still spaz out on my Instagram messages over that shit.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh my god,
Non-stop.
yeah, it's so
Non-stop.
funny. I go back 2 days later to see people flipping out.
Do you think there's a connection? I mean, between like obviously with Kanye being such a literally an influential person to millions of people, with the MAGA hats and, you know, doing the whole charade with Trump. I mean,
I think it might be like maybe one side of like an occult idea that all these people are, because like, in my opinion, even with Trumping and the whole QAnon thing, General Flynn, in my opinion, is an occultist. Linwood, in my opinion, is also. I think Trump is. I also think Kanye West is. And they all seem to be kind of like on like the same side or the same team of conspiracy thing. So I often wonder if they kind of like going towards the same thing, possibly at the same time. Is it all, you know, conducted together or whatever? But I do think there is something up with that.
they're all just running their own plan.
Yeah, or it could
like,
just.
What the fuck are you doing?
I mean, I
man?
hate to say like this, and I don't want to even like because I don't agree with certain things. But if you want to start thinking in an occult sense, I had said before in the past that during like, you know, when shit was crazy 2 years ago, I thought that was very much like the Scarlet Whore kind of crumbling in on herself, and that would be fully pushed towards the left. That would be like when the Scarlet Whore is totally off by herself. And she just destroys everything because it's never good enough, and I always got to change, and I always need to have this or have that. Never good enough, you know. All these names, all these labels everybody's got nowadays because, you know, the other shit just isn't good enough anymore. You know, that type of shit. And when the pendulum swings that far, it's eventually going to come back. And I've been saying for a while, in my opinion, the beast image, which I do think 17 goes back to, is going to start coming back. And Nazis would fall into that side of magic, going back to the right explosive right pillar without the left pillar balancing out. So I often wonder, is that what Kanye's getting at, too? Is putting that idea out there. I mean, because even the white people with the blue eyes, that's the white pillar with the top pillar of the blue sphere before you cross over in the abyss. It's all has like a cult symbolism to white power, the white fucking right pillar, literally. It can go that far back. So is that what he's trying to say when he brings this shit up? But the uninitiated have no idea and misinterpret it. We're just watching the characters swing from one side to the next now.
Well, yeah, when you talk about especially politics, I mean, politics on both sides, when you're talking about right or left, the right was completely different in the 90s than they were now. So everything, and I think we have we're very forgettable, I think, about a lot of things. I mean, and a lot of the people that are talking about these issues weren't even born before then. And like myself, like was too young to give a shit. So, you know, I think every generation is going to deal with this swing.
Yes,
you know,
yes, yeah.
There's things that, you know, the Democrats looked like the Republicans in the 90s, and then swing it back, you know, in the mid 2000s, and then swing it back this way. Everybody's got their thing, and it's almost like, it's not almost like, it feels like, at least for me, being in the center, you have people just barking at both ends on every side of the spectrum. It doesn't matter when you're talking, if you're a donkey or an elephant, or you're this or you're that. It's you're unvaccinated, you're vaccinated, you wear a mask, you don't wear a mask, you're okay with this group, that group. It doesn't matter. It's literally, there's no gray area. It's almost like it's been pushed to there's no gray area anymore.
Yeah, I say that a lot.
And white.
Again, even back to my Instagram page, I notice that a lot with people. It's like, because I shit on Trump, they think I like Biden, but don't see like 2 days ago I shit on Biden or AOC.
Yeah.
It's like, you I don't know. It's like, why do you all of a sudden assume if I don't like one, I all of a sudden like the other? Because it's like the whole pick a team fucking mindset.
It has to be one or the other.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck?
It's like, oh, well, did you vote for Trump? No. Oh, so you voted for Biden? No.
Clearly, it's radicalized now, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that it's gotten to the point of radicalization where you have people that literally in your own family won't talk to you anymore. Like, count you out, write you off, whether it's, I mean, even for a political view. So that's a psyop, in my opinion. You want to talk about breaking the family up even more. You're not even breaking up the household with the 2 kids and the parents. You're breaking up the grandparents, the cousins, the uncles, the aunts. You're breaking up the whole structure. Literally family members that are like, oh, you voted for Biden? Fuck you. Oh, you voted for Trump? Fuck you. And that's
I mean, I feel like I haven't talked to my brothers in forever.
And then the funny thing is, like, then to even now, if you're just walking into a store and you don't even know the person, you can look at them and judge them by wearing a mask or not. You don't even have to know this person. That's all you need to see, and you're already fucking making a file in the head of that fucking moron.
Yeah.
Thanks to you, we still got these things around, you fucking asshole. Like, that's what's going through my head. I'm already judging this person, not even knowing, for all I know, they could have actually fucking problems. Who knows?
It's so true. My gosh.
That's what we've been trained to do.
No, I know.
They've created all these like identifiers now, right? And I feel like that's what Kanye's purpose is at the moment. Like whenever I hear clips of him speaking, I'm like, he just sounds like he's saying these like far right trigger words. Like it's like not like the person didn't even ask him that question, and then he goes off about the Jays. He goes off. It's like he just has these talking points in his head that he's supposed to say, and I'm like, what are you even saying right now?
Yeah,
like Alex Jones is talking about fashion. He was talking about fashion. That was his point. Fashion in that conversation was fashion.
And then he went,
you're in the fashion industry.
And then he went on to talk about Hitler.
Yep.
Oh God.
That's what it was about.
That's what I'm saying. It's like he has these talking points in his head. That's his agenda in that conversation.
Oh, it doesn't matter why they asked him to come on. He's just going to say that regardless.
These trigger words, so all the far right people go, "That's our guy. That's our guy." And they just lose their fucking mind over it. And then all the left is like, "Oh my God."
I have noticed just getting into the podcasting thing and being part of the podcast community. I don't really when it comes to World War II, I think the propaganda was probably just as bad as COVID. So I really don't know what to go by. I'm sure a lot of things or stuff are blown out of proportion, but I'm sure things weren't gravy either, But I will admit, I have no problem saying it because I'm not one of these people. But since I've been podcasting and knowing people personally or even seeing things that have been getting popularized in conspiracies, Hitler may not have been that bad of a guy. We've been seeing that kind of pushed a little bit lately, from my opinion. I know people who aren't going to come out and say it, and I'm not saying it's any views, but there are people personally with those opinions that I have seen, or have been said to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I have noticed that from, getting a little bit more popular than I ever knew in the last few years.
So we kind of battle with this, not necessarily the Hitler part, but so we kind of, it's a joke at this point. We've been through, we're in our 7th season of our show. Seasons don't really matter, but let's say we're 80 something episodes into our show. And the bulk of it is Nazis. There's lots and lots of conspiracy that revolves around Nazis.
Oh, yeah. It's 3/4.
Oh, it's
that would be never endless. Never endless.
I mean, you could almost say that a good 95% of all conspiracies relate back to Nazis in some way, in one shape or another.
Yeah. A lot of some of the far out ones that do also come from if you want to start getting into Antarctica and all that shit, you can start coming out with some, some wild out there stuff, which could all have some truth if you're looking at it in a different way, maybe, but maybe it's misunderstood. But there is so many rabbit holes you can go with fucking that, just Antarctica.
I think when it comes to conspiracy theories, especially when you start to realize how much of it is kind of based around that, it's a slippery slope because nowadays, I would say within the past couple of years, conspiracy theory is based mainly around the right.
Yeah.
We're admittedly, we are not right leaning. I'm not left leaning.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of leave me the fuck alone.
Kind of in the fog,
live and let live, that type of thing. But
then if you go back 20 or 30 years ago, the left was kind of
left leaning. Yeah. And it's always
and then they switched
that it depends on who's in the White House. So if you have a Republican in the White House, then the Democrats are conspiracy theorists and vice versa. So It really all depends on who's in the White House that would be considered the conspiracy theorists at the time. But since the bulk majority, I would say, at least what I've noticed of conspiracy podcasting has been started within the past like 2 to 4 years. And in those 2 to 4 years, you obviously have the right-leaning conspiracy theorists. And when you, like I said, when you start to get into that stuff and you start to notice the Nazi in the, Germany and all that other stuff that is involved in these conspiracies, it becomes that slippery slope where you start to say, well, this could have happened, and if this did happen, then is it possible that we're being lied to about this and this and that? And if we're being lied to about this, then are we being lied to about Germany? Are we being lied to about Nazis? Are we being lied to about... And trust me, we didn't go through it as deep as I would say other people have, but we covered the
basics,
the Holocaust, never happened argument, or didn't happen the way that we were taught kind of argument. And there are some discrepancies there, but does that mean that we automatically were like, nope, never happened? But no. But when you start to see that certain things don't line up and you start to look at things critically, then obviously some minds will go farther than others, and some will be more apologetic than others. But you do get into the grounds of this very slippery slope when you start going down that road.
Well, that's
especially when you become, super red-pilled, where you're like, everything is a fucking lie, everything's a conspiracy, we live in a fucking simulation, all these people are fucking, leeching from us and stealing from us and trying to kill us and blah, blah, blah. And you really hit that, like, stride of being super red-pilled, paranoid, like that type of conspiracy theorist, then, yeah, anything goes at that point, including being an apologist for a mass murderer.
I also think the word gets thrown around as like an invisible terrorist too, just to inflict fear into people.
Yeah, I got a question. So clearly, George W. Bush, he was a Republican, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in office during 9/11. Who was the party? I never looked into this when we were looking into 9/11, but what side was the ones that were pushing the conspiracy first?
I think the left.
Yeah. So you had mentioned now it's the right.
Yeah. Like Michael Moore. Michael Moore was the one to come out with the 9/11 documentary first. Yep. I think.
Like you said, it's a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now Michael Moore was one of the biggest conspiracy theorists at the time.
Totally. Yeah. Now he's like totally fucked.
And I've often thought it might circulate like every 30 or 40 years almost, it seems like.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
You can even see like almost like wars kind of go along with them too, in a sense.
No, it might just be a byproduct.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily intentional.
No, you're right. You're right.
Naomi Wolf, the lady, I don't know if you guys have seen clips of her trying to warn people about blockchain and all this kind of stuff, warning people about the jabs and whatever. And I thought it was so weird that she came out and started talking like that, because she has been an extreme leftist for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why are you talking like this now? Very bizarre to me. And she's some owner of some sort of blockchain technology company now. And I remember studying her stuff like during university from like a very leftist perspective. And she used to work for a Clinton Foundation or for the Clintons in some capacity. I'm not sure, but
maybe it's not that one side or the other are becoming conspiracy theorists. Maybe it's conspiracy theorists are just that fucking fluid, where it turns to, well, the Republicans are in power now, so I'm going to go with what's going on the left, and the Democrats are in power now, I'm going to go with what's going on the right.
Well, it's whoever's in power. It's your fault if you're fucking up.
That's true. That's true. But you would think that there would be kind of some sort of consistency there. You would think over a long enough period of time.
That's where I think it's not intentional, because if you were if you were if you were a Republican, you would want the Republicans to continue being in power, continue. But like I said before, the ideas and the thoughts have shifted like a pendulum on both ends, and it's taken a couple decades to do that, and it's going to continue to probably do that. So, because a lot of people, when a lot of people, because
we'll be around long enough to see another shit show swinging back the other way.
Yeah, and when you talk about like the not siding with any of it, but when you talk about like the Nazi Democratic Socialist Party and like the parties that they created, now Nazism and neo-Nazism and whatever it is far right. So that's the thing. Like,
that's not how it started, though.
Yeah, it's not how it started. So I think whoever's in power, whoever has the control, whoever wins the elections, or and not even like rigging the elections. Like, we knew that George Bush definitely rigged the fucking elections when he got in. Like Obama probably rigged the fucking elections. I had this conversation with my mother the other day because she's like, "You're super conservative," and I was like, 1, I love you, fuck you. That's not true. And 2, it's just like I said before, it's two sides just barking at each other through cages, and that's probably on purpose. Yes. Just 100%. Everybody just getting mad at each other for just not all of it's stupid shit. Some of it's real shit. Like you got people fighting over abortion. The fact that people are even like arguing over it is like, holy shit. And then we got COVID, and it's just the turmoil that we've gone through when it comes to the mass media pushing certain things. Like, you have all these big news stations that are, supposedly far left, that are like, get your jabs, get your shots, get your shots, get your shots. Now they're like, and then you've watched the perpetual cycle. 80% rate is effective, down to like, we got 30-year-olds now just dropping fucking dead like it's nobody's business. And athletes, like, there was just that country singer that was 37 years old. I don't know what his status was in this stuff, but he's just like, just done. So there's so much flip-flop. Now you see the media being like, hold on, we gotta do this. So it just keeps perpetuating. And I think it's just to keep us
divided,
just fully in line with separation. And I think that's where Tavistock has evolved into now, is seeing how far to push those boundaries until it breaks, like Mike said. But I don't think it's going to break the same exact way, or the way that they might think it's going to break. I don't think we're going to have full blown civil war. Our country's it's not north south anymore. It's all these different pockets everywhere in this country. So you're not going to get, but you might start seeing the symptoms of it, like, which is what we're getting now: mass homelessness, mass mental illness, mass shootings and killings, and snatch and grabs, and just crime rates just through the roof. So it could just be all that. Now that's a whole nother side to the coal of, like, all these random people are just going to get fucked up. So that's been my thought, especially since we've done this episode, is everything that I see now that's on like a major news network is definitely just to incite thought on the opposite.
Yeah, so it's just to cause people arguing. One side's always wrong.
It's probably always been like that. Yeah. But we've just I
didn't notice it as much as a kid.
Now we're like hyper focused on it.
Yeah. I was too busy listening to music when I was younger, so I wasn't paying attention to politics. But I'm sure, there were people like that back then as well. Polarized then. I just probably didn't realize. I do know you guys also have to get going, right, Mike? You got to get going. So
yes, sir.
I figure we could wrap it up here. One thing I did want to say real quick that I thought was something that I kind of get out of the Tavistock as well, and I think it's kind of where occultism or magic comes in, where I was saying earlier, with like Kanye West just having the file in his head. Sometimes I think these institutes come up with ideas just to put out, regardless if it even existed prior to or not. Because humans have this free will that we can decide to incorporate that and believe it or not, and then we will latch onto it. So sometimes I even think that these things are just think tanks to put out thoughts for people to latch onto. And I think that is another thing that goes back to magic. So who knows what you're getting with these people. And I truly thank you for you guys coming on. You guys all made it here tonight, and you did a great job as well. I had a great time, so I just want to thank you all and let everybody know where to find your stuff real quick.
HushHushSociety.com.
Yeah.
All right. I forget that you actually have your own site and you don't have to like list off like 5 different places.
You're part of the ether with the .com website. Yeah, you can find everything there. We just started on Rockfin not too long ago, so we have our own video portion, which you can find the link on our website too, or search it Rockfin. We're the only Hush Hush Society on the planet, so.
There you go. So,
and thank you again for having us on. We appreciate it.
Of course.
It's always a blast.
Yeah, for real. Yes. I also, I do think your links are in the bottom now as well. Anyway, your site, I think I might have put it in there already. So if anybody's listening, you can check it out. If not, when you hear this drop, their link will be in there regardless. And Theresa, would you like to say anything? You want to drop your link, promote your show?
Sure. Well, I just want to say
thank you for coming on too.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, thank you to you guys for talking about this, because I just think it's a very thought-provoking topic, and I like what you're saying about how like it's maybe the purpose of Tavistock is to see how far it can push people, because like even like when we were talking about like the female role like in the family and whatnot, and how far they've pushed females in society. Now almost like destroying females with like the trans, like now men are just females if they want to be. It's like a whole fucking thing. Anyways, I just want to say thanks because I thought it was great. If you want to hear more of me, you can check me out on the Spiritual Gangsters podcast, which is with NY as well. And you can find me over on Instagram at Theresa.Cassar.
Awesome. Thank you very much, too, for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all. I had a great time. Thank you, everybody who jumped in on the live stream. We had a bunch of people commenting. Thank you, Donnie Darko, Curious, everybody who jumped in. Hawkett, what's going on? Yeah, General Lee. Saw General Lee here. We even saw some My Hot photo here.
Can we tell folks about our project coming
up?
Oh,
yeah, promote that. Yes.
That?
Yes, promote that. Yes.
Michael, this is your birth child, so
so anybody that is interested, we are kind of getting together. I think at this point it's 8 different podcasts shows with a bunch of different hosts, and we're doing 3 different roundtables with 3 different topics as of right now, and then we will be swap casting, so all of those roundtables will be on every single one of those shows' feeds. It includes everybody that's on screen or in your ear right now, plus some other really great podcasters that we got together with. And we have topics. The 3 topics that we're going to explore are Flat Earth, celebrity sacrifices, and Urantia. So it's going to be a pretty diverse set of subjects. So it should be pretty interesting. We're going to do those 3 separate roundtables, and then we're going to have 1 extra roundtable with all of us. It's going to be one big
of us at the same time. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
One big clusterfuck episode just to say thank you and to put out there and be wild. So stay tuned for that. That'll probably be end of January, early February by the time we get everything out.
That's awesome. That'll be cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And we know what's great is that I don't know. We haven't talked about how we're going to drop them, but I was like, this is almost extra episodes for me too. Because basically also I want people to know that what they're also getting at is that like there'll be other shows that I wasn't on the roundtable with that I'll also be releasing on my end. Yeah. So I'll be releasing shows that I'm not even in. So you'll get to hear all these other people too and all these other topics. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. I thought that was a cool idea. So, I think people should keep an eye out for that because you will get to hear shit without my mouth. And they might be a pretty interesting topic.
And all three of us will be split up.
Yeah.
We'll all be split up.
Yeah,
Yes.
all the shows are split up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, we'll wrap it up here. Mike had to go like fucking a half hour ago. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you, everybody, like I said, that was in the chat. And thank you all for joining me. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.